p.m. I will call this special meeting of council to order. Procedural notes: this meeting will be held electronically as per section 19(1) of the town's procedural bylaw number 6228-19 as amended due to the COVID-19 situation. Councilor, you need a motion to approve the agenda? Councilor Kim, Councilor Gallo, any comments or questions? Madam Deputy Clerk.
Recorded vote on the approval of tonight's agenda. Councilor Kim, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilor Gallo?
Yes.
Councilor Humphries is absent. Councilor Thompson?
Yes.
Mayor Marakis?
Yes.
Councilor Killiland and Councilor Gartner are both absent. That carries.
Thank you. Delegations, we have none. Items requiring discussion: 5.1 development charges study and bylaw update public meeting. We have a presentation to be provided by Ms. Wainwright-van Kessel, Director of Finance, as well as Gary Scandlan, Managing Partner, and Byron Tan, Senior Project Coordinator from Watson and Associates, Economists Limited. Ms. Wainwright-van Kessel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll just get started to introduce our presentation this evening.
Thank you.
Okay. So this evening, we're going to be taking a look at the changes to the DC bylaw and study that we're proposing. This is part of our public meeting requirement under the DC Act. So Aurora's 2019 DC study is the study that we're basing off of. We are not making a wholesale change to the study. This is not a new study by any means. This is an adjustment for the legislative changes that have recently happened. This takes care of the legislative changes relating to the development charges. We still have some work to do on the community benefit charge, but we have some time before we need to get to that point. The legislative changes are include removing municipal parking as an eligible service. So we've stripped that out as a separate item that will be ending once legislation has that take effect. We also removing the 10% discount on some of the general services, including indoor, outdoor recreation, library, and general government. Created a new general government class for studies as a service class. And we've also removed two types of developments that are now considered exempt. And we've also combined the eligible services for parks and recreation into one, indoor and outdoor recreation into parks and recreation as one service. So this will highlight some of those key legislative regulatory changes, identify the key updates to the development charge study and bylaw, and present the updated rates. And this is an opportunity to seek any feedback on this. Watson helped us develop our 2019 DC, and they are here to help us with the adjustments to ensure we comply with legislation. So I'd like to take this opportunity to turn it over to Gary Scandlan and Byron Tan, who have been assisting us with our DC updates. So I will stop my share so they can take it away with their presentation.
Mr. Mayor, sorry to interrupt. I hear some echoing. I'm not sure if everybody has their microphone off or.
Yeah, so if everyone, I'll just ask everyone that's not speaking to turn it off, please. And then we can go ahead. Thank you. I think Gary, go ahead. Floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Rachel, for a great overview. We put together a presentation. I think some of it's been very well covered already, so I'll just zip through some of the legislative changes. This is a public meeting, mandatory under the Development Charges Act, and with all meetings, there'll be a presentation and then questions from members of the committee council and from potentially the public, and then we conclude the meeting. No decisions will be made as of today. It's for information. Subsequent to this, and I'll note the date later, council will be back and council can consider the appropriate bylaw for potential passing. It was noted that we've gone through, there have been legislative changes. I'll quickly touch on those, but really what we're doing, as noted, removing this historic mandatory 10% deduction. So basically all services except for water, wastewater, storm, roads, police, fire, and transit have had this deduction. And with the latest legislative changes, we now can collect for 100% of the services. These are a result of these various these bills that the province put into place over the last 2 years. So there's these adjustments which will increase the charge, and then there's some areas of delayed collections and other areas where they've limited services that we can collect. Next slide. And so just to talk about the study timelines, we released the background study on April 22nd. There's a minimum 60 days in between when we release the study and the first date that council can consider the bylaw. So we're looking to be back before council on June 22nd to consider the bylaw, and that gives us our clear 60 days. Obviously, May 18th tonight, we're right in the middle, providing a reasonable amount of time for review of the background study. Next slide. Development charges, just for the general understanding of the public. They have been around for over 60 years. They're basically a charge that allows municipalities to recover the cost of infrastructure, which is put into place wholly or partially to support development. There are costs that the developers pay in addition to the development charge, basically internal to their developments. They'll put in internal roads, sewers, water mains, etc. Those are covered by the developer. These are the broader costs outside of the subdivision generally that we include in the DC. Next slide. So we talked about there was actually 4 different pieces of legislation starting from May of 2019 and coming through into September of last year. And these changes required us to make some refinements to your bylaw. Next slide. As noted, Bill 108, it was for the most part allowing for delayed payments. So for rental housing or institutional developments, they can now pay in 6 installments over 5 years upon occupancy. Nonprofit housing, they're allowed to pay in 21 payments over 20 years. If you're coming forth with a site plan or a application or a zoning bylaw application, then there is the rates are basically frozen until 2 years after you receive approval for that development. Now, with all of these delayed payments or frozen rates, the municipality can basically add interest to those payments each and every year. So that would allow the cost to stay relatively current with inflation or the cost of building the infrastructure. Next slide. Bill 197 changed the number of eligible services. We're down to basically 21 now, where it used to be just a minor number of exceptions that we couldn't collect charges. They've kind of reversed it now to say, well, there's only 21 that you can charge for. We've removed the 10% deduction, as we talked about. And then it's the changes allow us to use now any planning horizon for the services. So we can look out 10 years, 20 years, 30 years if we want when we're forecasting growth-related infrastructure. It's not a big deal for right now, but it'll be a little bit more advantageous when we come back around to do the full-blown update in a couple of years. We're not doing community benefit charges are for high density development, 5 stories or higher with a minimum of 10 residential units. You can potentially impose a charge which would be up to 4% of the market value of the land for the high density development. This is a change from what was allowed for before under Section 37 of the Planning Act. So they've made some adjustments. You have to go through a study process to justify the study. And then once implemented, it allows you to collect for basically costs that aren't covered under the development charge. So that's something that staff is considering, and but nothing's being advanced at this particular point. Next slide. As noted, there's these 4 or 5 different services where we're removing the 10% deduction. So removing that deduction in our calculation will actually increase the amount of the development charge. Now I'd note, because they changed the eligible services, that as of September 18th next year, we'll lose the ability to collect for municipal parking. So that service we can collect for basically another 15, 16 months, and then we have to drop it off. So we've adjusted the bylaw to reflect that as of September 18th next year, that charge is no longer recoverable. Next slide. And as I've noted, for the changes through Bill 108 and 197, there's some definitions changes. There's the clauses that we need to put in to reflect the delayed payments for rental housing or for institutional development, etc. So those have been included now in the amending bylaw. Next slide. Currently, your charges, and this is in 2019 dollars because your bylaw was passed in 2019. So we have to, your bylaw is actually indexed for inflation since then, but we have to go back to the original bylaw date and then put in the new charges, and then it'll be indexed up from there. So it's a bit of a calculation backwards, calculation forward, because we have to put in the bylaw in, the charges in the date that the bylaw was passed. Next slide. So you can see the yellow areas where we made the modifications, so more to those softer services. So now the charges for a single detached unit for all services, municipal wide, it'd be $25,137. You can see as we move across that chart, we go from the low density singles and semis, medium density, and then into the high density apartments. And then we have non-residential costs on a per square foot and per square meter. So these are the where we've updated the charges. On the next slide, you'll see that the comparison between the existing and the update. Basically, for a single detached unit, we're adding about $1,300 to the charge. So you can see we're going from 23,800 to about 25,137. Next slide. On the non-residential side, it's increasing by about 6 cents per square foot. So, or about 60 cents per square meter. Next slide. Last couple of slides are just comparisons. You can see we've included municipalities throughout York Region. We've also included places such as Toronto, some samples from Halton, some samples from Durham, and even as far as Hamilton, in order to round out the charges, the comparison. The dark color is the region. The kind of turquoisey blue, that's the local municipalities, and the orange is the school boards. So you can see right now that if you were paying for all charges, that you'd be a little bit lower than $100,000. So even with these charges at the region, the town, and at the school board level, we're still remaining under the $100,000 marker. Next slide. The next one is showing you the commercial charge. Once again, your relative position, very similar to residential. And you can see that the costs, the largest component of the costs are for the region, a smaller component for the local charge, and then education, a very minor amount. Next slide. Similar type of relationship, but this is for industrial. And you can see that some municipalities choose to charge a little bit less for industrial forms of development. But basically, you're in the same positioning as with the other two categories. Last slide, just is a reminder that June 21st is the date that we'll be back before council to consider the proposed bylaw amendments. That concludes my remarks, Mr. Mayor. Happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Thank you, Gary. Mr. Mayor Van Kessel, is there anything else to add? Or otherwise, I'm going to pull up the recommendations and then ask for a motion, and then we can get to questions.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, just a highlight of some of the dates that we have coming up. So we have June 15th is the tabling of our DC bylaw and study update. So that will be coming to GC, and June 22nd is the council meeting at which the development charge bylaw would be approved by council.
Thank you. So council, the recommendation is that report number FIN 21-024 be received. 2, that the updated development charges background study and bylaw be received as presented. 3, that the town's existing development charges bylaw be amended to comply with all recently updated applicable provincial legislation. 4, that any new comments, questions, and suggestions arising from the statutory public meeting be referred to staff for consideration. 5, that council hereby determines that no further public meetings are required under Section 12 of the Development Charges Act 1997. Would someone like to move those recommendations? Councillor Thompson, second, Councillor Kim. Comments, questions to the report, to the presentation? Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. Just quickly, in terms of communication, was there any communication from the public or the development community?
Ms. Wainwright-van Kessel, did you want Gary to answer that one?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Gartner could answer this one.
Nope, Mr. Gardner.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as per legislation, a notification went out of this meeting. I'm not aware of us receiving any responses back.
Councillor?
Okay, just a suggestion. I know we put it in the newspaper, and I don't expect a lot of public input, but at least at a minimum, when we publicize the meetings, and it was in last week's Auroran, and all it says is special meeting of council. As a suggestion, maybe we can identify what we're meeting about. Surely we can add that, a reference to what the special meeting of council is about, and it may catch an eye of someone, as opposed to them having to go to the website, look at our agenda, and yada yada. I keep trying to do my best to promote public engagement, but we have to also do our part. And when we do publicize, let's try to give as much information as we can.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson.
I just want to revisit the information around the community benefits charge. I look in the report, and there's a section that speaks to the fact that the primary focus initially really was in the updating of the DCs, and that we're bringing on a consultant to do a feasibility study around the community benefits charge. And in the meantime, we can still collect the parkland dedication. So I guess my question really is, through you to Mrs. Wainwright-van Kessel. I just want to make sure that by delaying the decision and going through these extra steps to make sure that we want to do this, we're not losing out on an opportunity to collect additional revenue. Is the parkland dedication similar to the community benefits in terms of the net dollars available to the municipality?
Ms. Wainwright-van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So part of what we did was we started with the development charge piece because of that removal of the 10% deduction that was required on some of our eligible services. So we wanted to address that first because we were leaving money on the table by not getting to that right away. For the community benefit charge, there are some pieces that replaces under the Planning Act. And until I believe it's September 18th of next year, we can still collect those items under the Planning Act. So we have a bit more time to work through the community benefits charge. But as the community benefits charge is a fairly new thing, what we are doing is we are going to take a look at the feasibility of a community benefits charge for the town to look at how much revenue it would generate under that versus other options within the Planning Act. And we will come back to council with that analysis once we have it.
Councillor.
Thank you. And then I guess my only other question really is, last time we went through a similar process with updating the DC bylaw, we learned after the fact that, there was an issue with regards to hotels and it was sort of a barrier and we needed to make provisions after the fact. So just in terms of our alignment with the region and anything that they're doing with the bylaws and any concern whatsoever that these changes might prove to be any barrier?
Ms. Wainwright-van Kessel.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I am going to ask Mr. Gartner if he can respond to this one because he's more familiar with some of those changes that happened since the previous bylaw.
Gartner.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The changes we're making to the bylaw here purely relate to legislation. So to my knowledge, I don't believe that's going to conflict with anything the region's going to do with their bylaw.
Councillor.
Great, thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. From the chart, Aurora's on the higher end with respect to this. What is the reason that we are there?
I was going to ask Mr. Scandlan, but Mr. Scandlan, did you want to answer that one, or did you want me to ask Ms. Wainwright-van Kessel? Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can start with that one. But part of the biggest part of the development charges that are paid by our developers is the amount that contributes to the region. So on that chart where we had a significant amount on that closer to the access and the higher amounts, you'll notice that those region development charges were significantly higher in those sections than they were for other regions or some other single tiers. So that is a big contributing factor to the higher charge that developers pay in Aurora.
Councillor.
Well, that answers the question in part, but why? Thank you. So why is the region higher?
Ms. Wainwright-van Kessel.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, each region has different growth needs that's happening over the next period of time. So particularly with York Region, it has gone through a period of very rapid growth, which has resulted in their development charges being higher. One of the largest costs in development charges at a region level is for water and wastewater, for developing those large underground trunks for managing water, wastewater, and also the treatment facilities for water and wastewater. And that makes up a large portion of it, which is why in York Region, especially with growth, you have to build those in advance of growth, because until they're in place, no growth can happen. So with the amount of growth that's happened over the last period, that's why their charges are where they're at.
Councillor.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is a fair question, but where are we at with the sewage, our sewage capacity? And is any of this with on the part of the region reflective of the difficulties we're having with our sewage disposal?
Councillor, you're a little bit strained,
Okay,
but we're strained. Just
okay.
yeah.
I'll ask another time. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is that all, Councillor?
Yes, thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'd just like to say that I agree with the comment that Councillor Gallo made. Maybe residents are not interested in our DC bylaw. Maybe they don't fully understand it. But I do think we need to be fully clear as to what our special meetings are about. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Madam Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're voting on item 5.1 for tonight. Councillor Gardner, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo?
Yes.
Councillor Thompson?
Yes.
Councillor Humphreys is absent. Mayor Marakis?
Yes.
Councillor Gilliland?
Yes.
Councillor Kim?
Yes.
That carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Confirming bylaw. Someone like to move that? Counselor Kim, Counselor Gallo, Madam Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight's confirming bylaw. Counselor Gallo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mayor Marakis?
Yes.
Counselor Gilliland?
Yes.
Counselor Kim?
Yes.
Counselor Gardner?
Yes.
Counselor Humphries is absent. Counselor Thompson?
Yes.
That carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Counselor Gardner, Counselor Thompson, all those in favor? Opposed, that carries. We are adjourned. See everyone 7 o'clock.